You're listening to Code Red with Secure America Now, the largest national security grassroots army.
Today, we are honored to have as our guest Michael Doran, a preeminent expert on Middle East security issues. Michael is a senior fellow and director of the Center for Peace and Security in the Middle East at the Hudson Institute. As a scholar, policymaker, and strategic analyst, Michael brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion today. Michael has held significant positions in Republican administrations. As a senior director in the National Security Council, he was instrumental in shaping U.S. strategies across the Middle East. He also contributed his insights as a senior advisor in the State Department and as a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense in the Pentagon. Michael's academic accomplishments are equally prestigious. He studied at Stanford and Princeton universities, where he received his PhD in Near Eastern Studies. In addition, Michael is a much published author and a frequent commentator on television. Before discussing the events in the Middle East, which we look forward to getting your insights, I would like to ask you to share your thoughts on the ongoing demonstrations that are occurring at universities across the United States.
Well, first of all, let me say thanks for having me, and thanks for that very, very generous introduction. I didn't want it to end. I felt very impressive listening to that. Like you're talking about somebody else I didn't know. So about the universities, let's just start by saying, can you believe this? I mean, can you believe before trying to take it seriously and analyze it, we've got terrorist supporters. Hamas is a terrorist organization, Alan. It's in addition to being anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, it's anti-American. It's 100% anti-American. It is the same as ISIS or Al-Qaeda. We know what the United States did to those organizations. We leveled Raqqa, we leveled Mosul in order to get rid of those organizations. So let's put it in the right frame. It's also an arm of into the Palestinian arena, an arm of Iran, which is killing Americans. Let's put this in the right context too. So we've got these deluded kids on campus who are taking control of these campuses in the name of an anti-American terrorist organization, or in defense of a terrorist organization that raped, murdered, and killed Israelis and Americans, by the way, and we're treating it like this is something that we should be engaging with sincerely, and I find it really mystifying. I don't, in a sense, I don't find it mystifying because I am a refugee from academia, and one of the reasons that I'm a refugee is the strain of thought that these people represent. It came out of Middle Eastern studies, or at least Middle Eastern studies, which my background contributed significantly to this really twisted worldview that they have. So I'm very familiar with it. I have, as is very obvious, I have no sympathy for it. I'm not surprised that it's happened, but I'm a little. I guess I am surprised. I was gonna say I'm not surprised. I am surprised. I'm familiar with it enough so that I know what I'm looking at, but I didn't realize they had acquired the mass that they needed to do what they're doing, and I didn't realize that the rot at the top of these institutions has gotten so bad that they can't actually clean out the squares when the kids are clearly violating university rules. I saw last night, University of Florida they swept the, they brought in the police to arrest these people for trespassing. They cleaned out the square, and they issued a statement. The university issued a statement, said, "We're not a daycare center. They're violating the rules of the university. We're going to enforce the rules of the university," which is all that we need to see happen at these places. But now, where does it come from intellectually? There's a debate going on. I have to say, I haven't followed what everyone is saying and really looked at it in depth, but there's a debate about, to what degree is this homegrown, and organic, I guess you'd say, and to what degree is it being organized and manipulated from outside or from groups inside. I saw a report, looked credible, that the Soros organization is funding this thing. You look at some of the pictures, you see lots of tents that all look the same. So that, did they go and buy 20 tents, randomly from the same place? So I believe there's money behind it. I believe there could be even foreign manipulation, but I think that we need to recognize first and foremost that this is homegrown. This is the intellectual face of American progressivism. It's been growing on our campuses for years and years. When I'm sure you've seen the clips. There are even Jewish kids out there who are mouthing these stupid slogans, "From the river to the sea," and so on. I talked to a friend in Israel who was at a Seder last week, and at the Seder was an American woman, an American Israeli woman, and she said that her niece just got suspended from Barnard because her niece is there mouthing all this stuff, right? So there's what I mean to say is that these are not just foreign students, or even primarily foreign students. They're not necessarily a majority of Muslims, although you don't know. I've seen other things where there were lots of them who were praying. This is American progressivism. Edward Said, who wrote the book on all this stuff, he wrote this book, Orientalism, years ago, 1980, I think. It is canonical reading for American progressives about the Middle East. And it has a very, very simple message, which is, and there's a lot of fireworks, intellectual fireworks, Foucault, Derrida, Roland Barthes, I don't know, all these semiotic structuralists and pro-structuralists and who knows what, to show that Said is a big intellectual. But the message, that's just like the wrapping around the message. The message is very simple. You don't need to know anything about the Middle East. The Middle East experts, they're going to blind you by telling you that you have to know something about the history of the region. You have to know something about the politics. You have to study it. It's complex. It requires analysis. No. It's all very simple, Alan. It's very, very simple. It's just the story that we know here in America from the relation between blacks and whites in the Civil War South. This is racist white oppressors and people of color who are oppressed. This is the story of modern history. This is the story of Israel. So don't be bamboozled by these people trying to tell you that there's any complexity here. It's all very, very simple. It's a simple moral tale. The Israelis are genocidal maniacs, and the Palestinians are the victims, and we need to stand with the victim against the oppressor. And that then takes it domesticates Middle Eastern politics and says it's just the race politics that you're already familiar with here. That's all you need to know.
Thank you, Michael. Very informative. One more point. Edward Said had his home base, Columbia.
Yeah.
And he, and there were others like him, but he was the godfather of all this in other universities, elite universities. And they recruited and they whitewashed the brains of average American students to, in fact, buy into this crazy idea that if you're an Israeli, you're a Jew, you're a bad guy. If you're not, you should be persecuting the Jews.
Right.
And
You
it,
should
it
be
is mad.
standing with us and affirming all that we're doing and taking control of the campus.
Yeah. Just and they did, and they got their administrators in, etc. Um, let me ask you to put on a different hat, which is the Iranian hat.
But
To help,
sorry, before we move off, can I just emphasize one thing that you just said?
Mhm.
The 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 real crime here is not the trespassing that these stupid students are engaged in. It's the failure of the adults to
Right.
enforce the rules and to explain to the students what education is and isn't, what freedom of speech is and isn't. This is terrible what they're doing, and they're taking what this incredible asset that the United States has. It's beautiful university system, and
Yep.
it's decayed terribly. It's decayed terribly, but they're really just destroying it, and it breaks my heart. If it wasn't so laughable, I'd be crying here.
Yeah. No, a very good point. Off to the Middle East.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, Iran launches a tremendous attack on the state of Israel. Israel, with the help of its allies, repels it. What motivated the attack? And what is the aftermath of the result of basically Israel not only surviving, but it seems like it had almost no impact on the state of Israel militarily? And what is the impact in terms of the Middle East as what occurred on that, what was it, Saturday night? I think.
Right. Well, yeah, on the 13th, I think it was. That is in my view, that is the number one question that should be on everyone's mind right now. Um, Personally, I'm a little more pessimistic than most of the analysts that I've seen. Right, that is that let's see what the Biden administration said. The Biden administration came in and said, this is a huge win. This is a huge success. There was a 99% interception rate of all these 330 some odd ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles. So we showed, the Israelis, together with the Americans and the other coalition partners, showed the Iranians that we have the superior technology. They couldn't get through. And in addition, we saw that the Iranians were not as good at coordinating the missiles, the drones, and ballistic missiles as we thought they were, and a lot of them apparently actually misfired as well. And then, of course, the Israelis counterattacked, and they restrained themselves, or were restrained by the Americans. I'll come back to that in a minute. But they took out an air defense system next to Natanz, the Iranian nuclear facility near Isfahan, in order to show the Iranians, and they did it with one missile. So they just went and said, you shot, in other words, you shot 330 at us. We knocked them all out of the sky. We shot one at you, and we took out your air defense system, and we showed you that if we want to, we can come and we can take out. Then the next step is you suppress the air defense system in order to carry out the attack. We can attack at will. And so the Israelis are feeling, or the Biden administration is saying this is a big win. And of course, Biden said the Israelis take the win. And a lot of people who are supportive of the Israelis are saying that the Israelis really did show that they are the more technologically advanced and more muscular power here, or more dangerous power. I don't really see it that way, because I think we need to understand this in a larger political military context, not simply in the narrow military to military action. But let's start with that. It wasn't as bad for the Iranians as it seemed. They got 4 ballistic missiles that got through the Israeli net, and including hitting the base where the Israelis keep the F-35, which is their premier system, which they would use to attack the Iranians. So that sent a dangerous message to the Israelis. Now, it didn't hit with a lot of accuracy, the 4 missiles that got through, and the missiles that got through to the base, but the accuracy is going to improve. When the Iranians started delivered their drones to the Russians, and the Russians started using them in Ukraine, the Ukrainians had a near perfect shoot down rate. I can't remember, it was 90 some odd percent interception rate of the Iranian drones. It's now down to 80%, because they learn over time, they get better. We shouldn't assume that they are bad and are going to always be bad. Just look at the tremendous advances that they've made in all of these technologies just in the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm not so confident because of some of the more obvious deficiencies that the Iranians displayed. Also, they didn't shoot their best stuff at the Israelis. They have better things in their arsenal, and the Israelis know that. The other thing here is that the defense economics are really lopsided against the Israelis with regard to these systems. The Iranians have created what military analysts call an offense-dominant military balance, a balance that favors offensive action with the weaponry that they have. They can, and you can see it, they're shooting drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles at all of their neighbors nearly, with just a couple of exceptions, and they face no repercussions whatsoever. Nobody is really attacking them back. The Israelis showed that they can attack, but they withheld their hand, the Israelis. So that's disturbing enough that the Iranians have this impunity. It's disturbing that they can overwhelm the defensive systems of anyone in the region. I mean, those 4 ballistic missiles getting through shows that they can overwhelm the best that the United States and Israel have to throw at them, or to use in defense, and under optimal conditions, because the Iranians, they telegraphed their intentions. The Americans had time to put things in place. What if this happens at another time when the Americans and the Israelis aren't synced up and Israel has to do it only by itself? What if the Iranians don't do it just for one night, but they do it for 2 weeks straight? They have the capacity to do that. This is one of the things that's most disturbing about what we're seeing, is that Iran, it's quite an achievement. We have to give them credit for this achievement. Under severe economic sanctions from the West, they have developed their own independent defense industrial base. So they can churn these things out, and they can continue to churn them out. They can have a high tempo, be supplying the Russians for a high tempo war in Ukraine, at the same time that they are conducting operations against the Israelis and supplying their all of their proxies across the Middle East to do it. So this offense dominant system, what does this mean? It means you have a Kevlar vest, and I have a pistol, and your Kevlar vest costs $2,000, and each one of my bullets in my pistol costs $2. And I empty my 6 bullets into your vest, and your vest stops 5 of them. And it actually is operating better than the manufacturer said it would, at a rate better, intercepting at a rate better than what the manufacturer said it would. But guess what? One of my bullets got through. You're dead. You have a fantastic, system there, but it's very expensive. It costs $2,000. And you're dead. The Iranians just need one really good lucky shot in order to cause an enormous amount of damage in Israel. But Israel has to be lucky all the time in terms of catching these. The only way, and I talked a lot here, but this is the main point, and it's what we should all take away. The only way to counter an offense dominant military balance or offense dominant regime is with offensive countermeasures. You cannot do it purely by defense. And what the Biden administration is telling the Israelis is we can do this purely by defense. What it's offering all of its allies, not just the Israelis, are purely defensive measures. We're refusing to go on offense. And we're also restraining the Israelis from going on offense. The Israelis when they saw the missiles being loaded up on the launchers, they wanted to preempt, and the Biden administration said don't. And then after the Iranians shot their missiles, the Israelis wanted to counterattack, and the Americans said don't. The restraint that the Israelis showed by just taking out the missile defense system was not from some internal calculation that they should be restrained. They thought the opposite. They thought if we don't do this, then Iran is going to change the rules of the game, and it's going to be okay for them to shoot at us like this. It's not okay. So the bottom line is Iran wins on the political military front because it's got an American policy that is helping it. That is restraining the power of Israel. Israel has the power to strike back fearsomely. Is that a word? Whatever, to smite them with great power. But the United States won't let them. And that wars are not simply won on the battlefield. They are political events, and they're won politically.
How do you have a sense of how the Iranian people, talking about politics, of how they have responded to this attack and counterattack?
It's a great question, and I don't have a good sense. Seen a few things on Twitter, heard a few comments from people, but it's not something that I have really looked at. I don't, just as a matter of my general view, I don't believe those who say that this kind of war is going to make everyone rally around the flag. I don't believe that, but I can't speak with a lot of knowledge about what's going on the ground there.
What about in Israel? What is the Israeli mindset, both in the military strategic world? Do they understand what you just explained to us of the need to take offensive action against an offensive action that was thrown at them? And in terms of general population, do you have a sense of, do they feel secure? Do they feel vulnerable? Do you have a sense of that?
I think so. It's all, when you say Israelis, it all depends on who we're talking about, because they're so divided among themselves right now that where you sit kind of, in politically kind of determines how you read these things. But if I'm to make a gross generalization, I think the Israelis recognize that this is the first Israeli-Iranian war. I think they recognize that the Biden administration is restraining them. I think their attitude toward the restraint differs depending upon where they are politically. So if they're on the right, then they tend to be more outraged by it than on the left. If you get to the center and the left, the attitude is more like, well, we've gotten a lot from the Biden administration, and we are dependent on the Americans to a great extent. And so rather than focusing the glass as half empty, we should see it as half full. And oh, by the way, we have to take care of Gaza first. So if the Americans want us to show some restraint against the Iranians, against Hezbollah in the north, that's not such a horrible thing, because the real problem is in Gaza. And then once you get from there, then you start getting into this really contentious debate that's going on right now is, do we have a ceasefire in Gaza right now, and a hostages for prisoners deal, which could very easily turn into a permanent ceasefire that will keep Hamas alive, or do we just push on to Rafah and try to topple Hamas completely right now? That also gets directly involved with the Americans who are saying don't go in. Biden is saying not just don't go against the Iranians, don't go into Rafah.
And Netanyahu doubled down today on saying we're going into Rafah whether we have a hostage deal or not. Do you think that he has the political courage to tell the Biden administration to go back, pack sand, and that Israel has to wipe out Hamas? And to do that, they have to go into Rafah. Do you think that that's a foregone conclusion, or can you see him pulling back?
I don't know. He keeps telling us that he does have the wherewithal, not just the wherewithal. He keeps telling us that there's not going to be no stopping him. But the last major maneuver by the Israeli ground forces in Gaza was in Khan Yunis, and it was in December. So the Netanyahu government has been telling us that next stop Rafah for 5 months now, and or 4 months, I guess maybe is a better way of saying it. But anyway, for months. And the Biden administration has been ratcheting up the pressure. And as you know, that pressure is coming in many different ways, not just Biden saying don't. They are threatening. They're threatening action in the United Nations against Israel. They have threatened sanctions against the IDF, for other issues. But they're showing that they can put pressure in lots of different ways. They can withhold arms shipments. They could. I mean, they're not going to. But if the Iranians were to attack again, they could withhold the radar feeds to the Israelis, and they wouldn't do it like they wouldn't do it in a they would do it in a sly way. They would give the wink and a nod to the Jordanians, who would say, I can't participate in this coalition. So they're sending all kinds of signals about willingness to really put the screws to the Israelis. So no one sitting in that seat, whether it's Netanyahu or Gantz or anyone else, can think about these issues without really being worried about what the Biden administration might do if you were to defy it on something that it had taken such a clear and public position on. Having said all that, the Israeli people, this is the one issue on which I think they're all unified. You don't see the unity in the Israeli press, because the Israeli press is a lot of it is owned by political actors, or controlled by political actors who just want to topple Netanyahu. That's all they can think of night and day. And so they are depicting all of this, as Netanyahu versus Netanyahu and the guys to his right, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, versus the sane security establishment. But the fact of the matter is that every Israeli wants to go to Rafah. Every Israeli thinks it's a strategic necessity, and that's, I think, what gives Netanyahu his strength in all this. The analysis out there, you see it in Tom Friedman in the New York Times and elsewhere, that Bibi is just trying to save his seat, and he's just thinking about himself personally and his personal political future, and he's not thinking about the country. It's very easy. His personal political interest and what the majority of Israelis want is all lined up, as far as I can see it. But right. It's the proverbial he's caught between a what is it? An immovable, a rock in an immovable, in a hard place, an immovable object and a irresistible force. I'm mixing up all of my statements, but that's where we're at.
Do you think it's inevitable that Israel is going to have a war with Hezbollah?
No. In the same way that I don't think that taking Rafah is inevitable. If Israel wants the north of Israel, all along the border, is depopulated. Towns like Kiryat Shmona have been evacuated because Hezbollah is shooting anti-tank guided missiles across the border, and so this is a kind of a first for Israel of having the border areas depopulated around Gaza and up in the north. It's a very threat to the viability of the state, the threat to the rationale of Zionism, and so the government is under great pressure to convince the people of the north that they are safe, and the only way they can do that is by moving Hezbollah back from the border. The only way that can happen, I believe, is through the application of military force. You have to compel them. The Biden administration has deployed Amos Hochstein, a former Israeli, now an American, who's trying to negotiate a deal between the Lebanese and Israel that will end the war, end the conflict there, and provide security for the north. It's based on the idea that Israel will make territorial concessions to Lebanon, and the international community will channel millions, if not billions, of dollars into South Lebanon, which means into the pockets of Hezbollah, and so on. This is, I think, a complete. There's no chance that this will ever work. However, it's a very important message that the Biden administration is sending to the Israelis, which is don't go to war. There's a diplomatic solution, and we are brokering it. Work through us. That's again a way of restraining the Israelis. I saw the other day that Defense Minister Gallant made a statement where he said we've killed half of the officers of Hezbollah in the south. The other half are hiding. We're winning. I see that as laying the groundwork. If there is a ceasefire in Gaza, then there'll be a ceasefire in the north, and then people are going to say, you stopped the war, but you didn't get rid of the threat from Hezbollah, and the government or Gallant will say, well, we did. We chastened them. We got them good, just like we got the Iranians, because the Iranians weren't able to hit us with any of their missiles, and we showed them that we can hit them. That will be the game if they stop. And so once again, you're going to have an Israeli public that's going to be saying, like hell, they're right there across the border. They can start up at any time. We've got to push them back. And the government, feeling the pressure from the Americans and others, that will say, we'll try to explain that actually things aren't as bad as the public is saying it is.
I've seen reports that a quarter of Israel's population are refugees within Israel, that they had to abandon their homes, they had to move out of their neighborhoods, their territories, and I don't know how long that can sustain.
That number sounds high to me, but we're certainly talking about hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah,
for sure.
Can you explain what is the motivation or what is the worldview of the Biden administration when it comes to Iran? They're continuing the Obama policy of placating Iran. Trump changed course when he was president. From an American perspective, why is why is the Biden administration putting all its eggs in the Iranian basket, or it seems that way? And what would you like to see American policy to be?
So let me start with the last one first, and then work backwards as to why they don't see it the way I do. I want to put it in defense, defense analytical terms. I want us to reverse the offense dominant regime that the Iranians have created, and I want us to create an American offense dominant regime. And so that's a convoluted way of saying it. I want us to deter Iran. I want us to prevent it from moving forward on its nuclear weapon program, and I want us to deter it, the use of its missiles, drones, and ballistic missiles, both from Iran proper and from its proxies. I want us to hold Iran responsible for the use of its weapons by its proxies. I do believe they are responsible. I do believe they are directing their proxies in these attacks. There's a debate about that. There are people who tell you the intelligence says no, the Houthis have more freedom and so on. To me, that is even if it is true, that's a little interesting piece of intelligence to have, but that is not a strategic analysis. The proper thing for the United States to do strategically is to hold Iran responsible for what its proxies do with its weapons. And if the proxies cannot be controlled by Iran and they're going to use the weapons irresponsibly, then Iran shouldn't give it to them. That's as simple as that. The Biden administration, if I can steal a couple of lines from Edward Luttwak, he said there's a Biden doctrine, which is that Iran can attack any country it wants, when it wants, with drones, ballistic missiles, and cruise missiles, but no one can attack Iran. That is the Biden policy. That is an objective statement of the Biden. That's the Biden doctrine. And there's a corollary also stated by Luttwak, which is that when we do carry out counter attacks, we only do it against the proxies, and we only do it, we only hit either inanimate objects or very low-level figures in the proxy network. So Luttwak's corollary statement, the corollary is we can deter Iran by killing Arabs, and that this is not a way. This is not a way to deter Iran. You want to deter Iran, you have to kill Iranians, and so we don't go after in Iraq and in Iraq we went after some higher level figures within the Iraqi network, but we didn't go after the Iranian liaison officers, which is what you really have to hit, and we won't do that. We won't. But I would start even before we go to military action. Let's just enforce the sanctions. The Trump administration took the oil sales of Iran down to zero, basically. They're now at record levels to China. We are providing China with subsidized oil, in effect, because Iran sells it at very reduced, at below market value to the Chinese. So China, our great rival globally, which suffers from a lack of natural resources, is getting cheap oil from the Iranians and the Russians. By the way, it's enriching Iran, so the two of them are getting stronger. Our policy is making the two of them stronger individually, but also collectively. So we're building a rod for our own back. It makes no sense. Now, why doesn't the Biden administration see it the way I'm seeing it? They believe that if we had them here, if I had Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, or some other, Anthony Blinken, if I had him here and we gave him truth serum and he told us what he'd really say, I can guarantee you what he would say. He'd start with, because they always start this way, and I think they truly believe it. Alan, we're not naive. We know who the Iranians are. We're not, you talk like we're naive. We're not naive. Okay, you're not naive. I believe that. You actually know who they are. You know they're bad dudes. They said, We think that the best way to manage this conflict with the Iranians is in the framework of engagement. We engage with them, not thinking that we're going to get them to stop being our rival, but that we can manage the rivalry better this way. If we go at them, as you're saying, hold them responsible for everything, suddenly you have a regional conflict and you have conflict everywhere. Look at what we did. And they're very proud of this. Very, very proud. Look at the truce between the Saudis and the Houthis. That was because we were engaged with the Iranians. And remember, Alan, how that happened, what happened there. The Biden administration came in, and first thing it did was it resurrected the file on Khashoggi to depict the crown prince in Saudi Arabia as a killer. So a reputational attack on him. He's a very bad man. And then we said, oh, he's also very reckless. Look what he's doing in Yemen. He's a bad, reckless man, and he's caused, this was their line, the worst humanitarian disaster of the century in Yemen. All because of, and you laugh because we all know that the worst humanitarian crisis of the century was in Syria, right? Which was caused by the Biden policy, the Obama policy of letting the Russians and the Iranians depopulate every Syrian city. Because so it just shows you they only trot out the humanitarian card when they want to beat up on an ally. So then they took the Houthis off of the Mohammed bin Salman, bad man, bad, reckless man. But the Houthis, potential partner for peace, we take them off the terror list, and they brokered a deal. This is the same play that they're running against Netanyahu. Netanyahu, bad man, Gaza humanitarian disaster, got to withhold arms shipments. They started threatening to withhold arms shipments from Saudi Arabia. Territorial concessions to Hezbollah in the north, and together we'll show the Iranians that we can together negotiate over the heads of our allies and make peace in the region. They think this is clever realpolitik, really sophisticated stuff, and their base loves it domestically. All those kids on college campuses that are saying from the river to the sea, they love this stuff. So it works domestically. This is their conceit internationally. The bottom line is it makes our enemies stronger. It makes us weaker. It makes our allies weaker. It makes our alliance weaker.
Well, thank you for that optimistic analysis, Michael. We look forward to hopefully a change, a new administration taking a new look and new policies. I want to thank you for taking the time for sharing your very interesting insights. And we hope to have you back at some point to continue the conversation.
Anytime. As you may have noticed, nobody has ever accused me of being a man of few words.
Well, yeah, but they're intelligent words, and I'm almost sure I read that Lutvak piece that you. I
saw it on Twitter. I think there's such good lines. I wanted to steal them. You know.
Yes, I think he wrote it. I think he published it on Unheard. And I'm reading it.
He probably did.
I'm laughing to myself. This is a real. But anyway,
since he published it, it's good that I didn't just steal it completely, plagiarize.
You footnoted it. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Code Red Podcast. Be sure to click subscribe to stay up to date and be the first to hear about our future podcast. You can also find and subscribe to the Code Red Podcast on Podbean, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube.